and welcome back to the Body for Minds podcast. Today I want to talk about perfectionism. And I'm going to approach this a little differently than you might expect. Because if you're anything like the women I work with, perfectionism is not something that feels like a flaw. It's something that has worked. From the outside, it looks like this. You're reliable, you deliver, you think things through, you care about doing things well. And as a result, people trust you. But inside, it can feel different. Constant recalculating, quiet pressure, a sense that if you drop the standard, even slightly, something important might fall apart. At work, at home, with your kids. So this episode is not about telling you to let go of perfectionism, because that would miss the point entirely. Instead, I want to show you why perfectionism made sense, why part of it is still useful, and where it quietly starts limiting you without you noticing. Perfectionism didn't come out of nowhere. It was built, reinforced, rewarded. You learned early on that doing things well equals being trusted, being reliable equals being valued, and getting it right equals creating safety. And the better you got, the higher the stakes started to feel. Mistakes didn't just feel like mistakes anymore. They started to feel personal, like they were saying something about you. And for many women, that didn't stop when they became mothers. It intensified. Because now the stakes feel even higher. It's no longer just about performance. It's about your children, your career, your relationships, the overall stability of your life, the example you set. So of course you hold a high standard. That is not dysfunction. That's responsibility. And this is important because you can't afford to just not care, and you are right. But here's where something subtle changes, and this is the part most people miss. Perfectionism starts as a standard for your work. But over time, it becomes a standard for you. Not, this needs to be done well, but I need to get this right. And that shift is everything. Because now it's no longer about the task. It's about your competence, your identity, your worth in that moment. And this is where the pressure increases. Not because there's more to do, but because there's more at stake internally. You start to overthink decisions, replay conversations, read that email one more time just to make sure it's flawless, adjust the paragraph again, redo the graphic because it could still be better. And then at home, you read the parenting books, compare advice, question if you're doing it right, maybe even track it all just to be sure. Not because you lack capability, quite the opposite. You are capable. And what's one more thing, right? But the margin for error keeps shrinking. So you add more, you refine more, control more. Not just to maintain the standard, but to protect the version of you that gets it right. And this is where perfectionism quietly starts keeping you contained. Not small in a visible way, but small in how fully you show up. Let me explain what I mean by that, because this is where many conversations about perfectionism tend to go wrong. This is not primarily about low confidence or not feeling good enough. For most ambitious, high-achieving mothers, it's about, if I drop the standard, something important will suffer. And mostly that is not imagined. There are real consequences. Things might slip. People might notice. The load might come back to you. So your system does something very intelligent. It holds the line. But over time, this creates a different problem. Because when everything feels important, nothing can soften. Nothing can adjust. And you stay in a constant state of holding, managing, controlling outcomes, not because you want to, but because it feels necessary. And this is where perfectionism is starting to cost you in ways that aren't immediately obvious also. From the outside, it looks like you're handling a lot. Inside, it never fully lets up. Burnout happens not just because you're doing a lot, but because your system never gets to stand down. Even when things are fine, your system stays active, still scanning, still anticipating, still adjusting, still criticizing that you could have done better because you are your own toughest critic. And over time, something else happens. You lose access to yourself in real time. You're making decisions, but not from what feels right, instead from what keeps everything working, what keeps this version of me intact. And if you've listened to recent episodes, you recognize this. It's where self-contact and the connection to yourself drops because you're no longer relating to yourself. You're maintaining a version of yourself. You're still functioning, still capable, still holding everything together. But you're no longer fully in the experience of your own life. And on top, your nervous system is in constant overdrive. So instead of asking you to let go of perfectionism, I want to offer something else. What if the goal isn't to lower your standards, but to separate standards for your work, and that includes motherhood, from standards for your worth? Because those two have become intertwined, and they don't need to be, or in fact they shouldn't be. You can care deeply about doing things well without making every outcome mean something about you. And this is where body awareness comes in, not as a concept, but as a real-time tool. Because the moment this pattern activates, it shows up in your body first. Tension, tightness, urgency, a sense of contraction. And if you can notice that moment, don't fix it, don't override it. Just notice it. And you create a tiny bit of space. And in that space, something shifts. You start responding with awareness. Not to be perfect, but to stay connected to who you are and who you've become through motherhood. That's self-contact. There's one more layer I want to name because I know this matters to you. When perfectionism is tied to identity, we don't just hold it for ourselves. We pass it on. Not intentionally, but through what we model. How we respond to mistakes. How we talk about effort. How we react when things don't go as planned. And what I mean by that is not necessarily directly to your kids, but the way you treat yourself also. And then it adds on to what we hope they will achieve, what grades they come home with. And children pick up on this quickly. Not the words, but the pressure. And sometimes even the seemingly secret disappointment, maybe, that's underneath. So this work isn't about becoming less driven or less capable. It's about creating a different relationship to effort, mistakes, and growth. So that also your children learn they can take up space before they get it right. And so can you. So here's what I want to leave you with today. Perfectionism didn't keep you small. It helped you build a life that works. But the part where your worth gets tied to getting it right, that's the part that limits you. Not by stopping you, but by keeping you contained. And the shift is not dramatic. It's subtle. It's in moments like speaking before you've perfected the sentence, making a decision without overcalculating, which, by the way, adds to decision fatigue if you overcalculate. Letting something be good enough without it meaning something about you. Not because you don't care, but because you're no longer equating performance with identity. And from that place, you don't become less. You become more available, more present, more you. Until next time, more you, less noise.